Welcome. I just wanted to give you a quick run through of Chapter 3 on emotions and moods. So let's get started. So, affect is the combination of emotions and moods. Emotions and mood make up what's called affect, which is the range of feelings that employees experience at work. And we'll talk a little bit more about the difference between emotions and moods as we go on. So emotions are sort of triggered by specific events, and they're brief and very intense. So they can be internal, such as pride, love, and they can emerge. But the key thing is emotions are short-term, quick, very intense, as opposed to mood, which is a general feeling. It might last much longer. So the mood I'm in, sort of the long-lasting feeling, my mood about work or whatever, and my emotions combine to make up the overall effect, which is right here. Now, there's lots of theories on where this comes into organizational behaviors. There's lots of affect event theories, like what events trigger good emotions, good moods, all that sort of stuff. How do I characterize the job? How do I change the job demands? How do I understand how people feel? Because remember, we go back to the management theories that things change. It isn't just the old scientific theory. We kind of understand now that how people feel, their emotions, their moods generate their job performance. And that's pretty critical to any sort of business. So all these sort of things, the work environment, how do I create things? They create events, which create reactions. And how do I try to manage those in the business so that I have a good mood and I have good emotions? And that's very powerful because remember, you're only as successful as the people that are working for you are. So there's a thing called affect climate, which is kind of what you might think it would mean. It says, what is the climate? And shock of shocks, the climate sometimes can be positive, the climate sometimes can be negative. But what kind of sort of organizational climate do I have? And it ranges all over the place, from enthusiastic to a lot of tension, to calmness, to depression. You can put these on different scales. And as you know, just like there's thousands and thousands of emotions, there's thousands and thousands of climates. So moods, as we mentioned, are generally more enduring. And again, you can have positive or negative, but the key thing is, how do we create a positive mood? How do we do high energy, concentration? How do we give folks a goal that they can rally around, that they can work around and celebrate success, so that hopefully our organization has a positive mood as opposed to a negative mood when they feel, that we're not winning, or we don't have a common goal, or I'm not appreciated. That's the whole point of the chapter. So how do I create an environment where people feel excited about what they're doing, feel that they're appreciated, feel that they're on a winning team? There's another thing called emotional labor, all right? Now, that's how management creates publicly observable expressions to try to win folks over, right? Another term, emotional dissidence, is the difference between what my expected emotions and what the real inner emotions are. So almost every organization is going to say, gee, my expected emotions are everybody's happy, satisfied, feels appreciated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But underlining that might not be what the real emotions are. So people can sometimes act. There's a thing called deep acting. That's where I project something very, very different than the underlying feeling. So the example they give here is a professor who might psych themselves up even though they've got some significant family member illnesses or issues. So they really, and the reason it's called deep acting is they really emotionally present something that's very different from what's actually going on. Surface acting is, I think we all do this to a certain extent, but it's a little more, not quite as deep as the deep acting. You sort of, a flight attendant puts on a nice smile and all that stuff, but it's very different from the deep acting where I'm totally different from what I might think I am. So there's levels of faking. We just talked about deep acting is actually we try to change the emotion. And the surface is more where we just kind of hide them, right? We put on a happy face. And then there's this whole thing of emotional intelligence. And this is, I think, an important key takeaway. And there'll be a separate video on how you can do this to help it. So what's powerful to me about emotional intelligence is if you think of IQ, like intelligence, right? That tends to max out at a certain age, right? It's hard to get more brain power. But emotional intelligence, we can learn throughout our lifetime, right? How do we regulate our emotions? How do we become self-aware of our emotions? And how do we understand other people's emotions? And then finally, it's not on the chart, but how do we use this to help ourselves and our organizations? So they talk about four aspects. The first one is you have to perceive the emotions, right? You have to accept that you have emotions and that others have emotions. And then you need to, how do you use these emotions to think about problem solving? Then how do you understand what emotional information is? And then how do you manage both in yourself and in others? Emotional intelligence is highly related to job performance, and it's a predictor of how much success you have in your organization. We call it organizational citizenship behavior. Emotional intelligence has impacted the workplace. So they've put in training programs, all sorts of stuff, articles, and you'll see some of these later in the week. Federal Express is an example of a program that they put in, know yourself, choose yourself, give yourself, and their key thing is emotions drive people, people drive performance. And that's, I think we've reiterated that. That's very, very, very true. Emotional intelligence is distinct, but different. There's lots of individual differences. It develops over a person's lifespan, and your ability to identify and perceive emotions and understand them and not hide them, right? Recognize them, and there'll be a whole expert video we've got coming up on emotional intelligence, which I hope you'll find interesting. Okay, emotion is also contagious, and I think we understand that, right? If I'm happy, if I'm upbeat, and positive, that tends to be contagious amongst the organization. So as a leader, you really want to be upbeat and project enthusiasm. Well, it's contagious within the work group, it's contagious to the leader, it helps people understand each other, it helps you understand their hot buttons. I think we all sort of get this. Now, this is also very interesting, and there'll be a separate video on this. It's a very interesting neuroscience around mirror neurons. So mirror neurons, and you'll see it more in the video, but in a very simple way, is when I see you eating, I get hungry. Now, nothing's changed with me, but I want to mirror. Like if you're eating a banana, I want to eat a banana, right? Or my neurons might fire up when I see you eating a banana. And it's a very interesting, mirror neurons is very interesting, and there'll be a separate video just on that. So that's the chapter. Questions, let me know. Thanks.